Saturday afternoon. The diner was packed. A group of teenagers walked in, loud, laughing, glued to their phones. They sat at table 7, right in the center of the dining room. Eli approached with a small notepad, offering a faint smile. One of them, Ryan Bennett, whispered to his friend, "Yo, look at that waiter. Face looks like it got grilled." The whole table snickered quietly. Eli heard it. After the explosion, his hearing was sharper than most. Each laugh felt like a needle to the skin. He bent down to pick up a dropped menu. His hand trembled slightly. His eyes stayed down. Ryan blurted, "This guy should be cast in a horror movie." Another teen raised his phone. "Quick shot for the meme." Click, a camera shutter. The group burst out laughing. Eli stayed silent, but at the next table, an older man set his fork down. His eyes were fixed on Eli Parker's left arm. Frank Bennett, Ryan's father, sat just 2 tables away. He was eating alone, quietly, until the laughter broke the air. He turned. His gaze landed on the waiter, scarred face, trembling hands, and then the tattoo exposed beneath a rolled-up sleeve. 3 faded words: 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and a string of numbers that chilled him. Frank dropped his fork. His fingers trembled. A memory came flooding back, suffocating, searing, loud. The Battle of Fallujah, a burning Humvee, a corpsman charging into flames, dragging men out one by one, and that face was the same, though now disfigured. Frank stood up. His eyes were red. He stared at his son, still laughing, clueless. "Ryan, give me your phone. Now." Not because of the disrespect, but because the man Ryan had mocked was the one who had saved his older brother, Lieutenant David Bennett. Frank gripped his son's phone. On the screen, the image of the man with the scarred face. He held it down, deleted it, said nothing. Then he took a napkin, pulled a pen from his shirt pocket, wrote a short note. To the man, from the father of Lieutenant David Bennett. Signed, Frank. He walked to the counter, asked the cashier to give the note to Eli. No name needed. Just said, "Hand this to the server, the one with the Marine tattoo." Returning to his table, he sat in silence. His eyes stayed on the man, the one who had pulled his son from fire. He remembered the telegram. Lieutenant Bennett survived thanks to an unnamed corpsman. They never found him, until now. At a quiet little diner, that man was still alive, still silent, just as before. And Frank knew this story was no longer his to keep. That night, Frank didn't eat dinner. He opened his laptop, fingers typing slowly. In the 3-5 Battalion Veterans Facebook group, he wrote, "I saw him again, the man who ran into the fire to pull my son from a burning Humvee." He attached an old photo. Lieutenant David, bandaged head to toe, beside a faceless medic, only part of a tattooed shoulder visible. Then he wrote, "He's not in a hospital, not at the Pentagon. He's carrying food trays at a small diner, and he's being mocked by the very generation that should be thanking him. No hashtags, no call for likes, just a father, finally getting to say thank you." 3 hours later, the post had over 1,000 shares. By morning, it had reached veteran communities across the nation. Eli didn't know yet, but outside that little diner, dozens were already planning a long overdue thank you. The next morning, at an old military base in Georgia, a veteran quietly reposted the message, "I owe this man my brother's life." In California, a widow wrote, "He tried to save my husband, even when the fire had already consumed the vehicle." From across the states, messages poured in for Eli Parker, whom they called by a name well known in the military, Doc. An elderly soldier, now a school teacher, wrapped his father's Purple Heart in cloth. He included a note, "My father received this medal, but it should have gone to you." The package was sent with no return address. Destination, Riverside Diner. There was no campaign, no media coverage, only a quiet ripple of gratitude. And then, the people Eli once saved began to show up at that diner. Not to eat, but to stand and say the words they never got to say. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Monday. Eli arrived at the diner as usual, brewed coffee, wiped tables, placed flowers on the counter. Everything was quiet, like always. What he didn't know was that today, the customers weren't just here for breakfast. The door opened, a soldier in uniform walked in, then another, then a third. They said nothing, just silently sat at different tables. Each one left a small card on the table. On it, just 3 words. Thank you, Doc. Eli didn't understand. He looked around, every pair of eyes on him, not judging, not pitying, only reverent. An old sergeant stood, walked forward, and saluted him. Formal, steady. You saved my life in Fallujah. I couldn't leave without saying thank you. Eli stood still. For the first time in years, he cried. Not out of pain, but because he no longer had to carry the burden alone. And in that crowd was a familiar face walking through the door. Someone Eli never thought he'd see again. The door to Riverside Diner opened again. A tall man in plain clothes stepped inside, his face stern, but eyes red. He scanned the room, then stopped, eyes locking onto Eli. He hesitated, took slow steps forward, as if each one dragged a heavy memory behind it. Eli froze. He recognized those eyes instantly. The same eyes that once looked at him in terror as a Humvee burned behind them. Lieutenant David Bennett. David stopped in front of Eli, said nothing, just opened his arms and hugged him tight, as if holding back 20 years. I'm alive, because you didn't walk away. Eli said nothing. He just nodded, slowly, and closed his eyes. In that moment, the war seemed to fade, leaving only 2 men, 2 hearts, and a long overdue debt, finally paid. There were no medals, no speeches, just an embrace worth more than all the ceremonies in the world. But someone else also stood up. The boy who had laughed at Eli now walked toward him, trembling, eyes full of remorse. In the corner of the room, Ryan stood. He was no longer the smug teenager from earlier. His steps were slow, head bowed. In his hand, the phone, now powered off. He walked up to Eli, stood still, said nothing, then pulled a folded note from his pocket. Eli looked at him, not angry, not bitter, just quietly waiting. Ryan whispered, I was the one who took the picture. And I'm really sorry. No one interrupted, no applause, just a long, heavy silence. Eli nodded. He unfolded the note. Inside was a single, messy line. Your scars are medals no one else has the courage to wear. Eli looked up at Ryan. His scarred hand rested gently on the boy's shoulder. I forgive you. No further words. And in that exact moment, Ryan knew. An apology wasn't enough. He needed to act, to restore what he had broken. 1 week later, a new post appeared on the town's Facebook page. Fundraiser for wounded veterans, from those who were wrong. The author was Ryan Bennett. He stood behind a bake sale table at the local park. Next to him was a donation box filled with handwritten cards. Each pastry is an apology. Every dollar is a thank you to the silent server. Laughter of children, soft speaker announcements echoed nearby. His friends, the same ones who once mocked Eli, were there too. They didn't talk about past mistakes. They acted to make things right. 1 week after that, at Riverside Diner, Eli received a special delivery. 20. 0 raised for a Wounded Veterans Foundation. With a note. From the younger generation, for those who never let go. In the corner of the diner, a whiteboard was set up. Title: Lessons from Doc. There, Eli now held free first aid classes for the town's teens. He spoke simply, slowly, and each time he pointed at his scarred hand, he'd say, I couldn't save everyone, but I never walked away from anyone. The story spread, all the way to those in uniform. In Washington, D.C., a letter stamped with a red seal from the Pentagon was sent to Riverside Diner. Recipient, Eli Parker. Inside was a special invitation, with testimony from witnesses, fellow Marines, and the public. We formally nominate Eli Parker for the Medal of Honor, the highest military recognition in the United States. Eli held the letter, sitting silently at his usual corner table. His hand trembled slightly, but his eyes didn't shine the way people might expect. They softened, as if weighing something deep inside. 1 week later, he sent a reply. Simple, unpolished, just handwritten, in blue ink. I am grateful, but I must decline. I've lived with that honor every day, by never turning my back on my brothers, and I need no other recognition. The breeze was soft. The paper folded quietly. He placed it in a drawer and returned to brewing morning coffee. That day, the diner manager updated the front sign. Now serving, Eli Parker, Medal of Honor nominee and our silent hero. Not all heroes wear capes. Some wear ball caps, gloves, and carry trays in silence. Eli Parker never asked for applause. He didn't live for medals. He lived to keep an old promise. No one gets left behind. A soft piano played. The lights in the diner dimmed. Eli stood at the door, gazing at the sign. Doc's first aid class. From a man once laughed at, Eli had become a quiet light, guiding a new generation to respect, gratitude, and healing. At Justice for Veterans, we don't tell stories to make you cry. We tell them to restore justice. Because thousands of other Ellis out there still live, still carry their wounds, but have never once been called what they truly are, heroes. You can scroll past this story, or you can share it, so that some Eli out there will know they are not invisible. What will you choose?